All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating and, frankly, polarizing figure in cybersecurity, Jonathan Scott. And just so we're all on the same page, no, we are not talking about the guy from Property Brothers. This Jonathan Scott, he paints a picture of himself as a top-tier researcher, a kind of digital truth seeker, digging deep into things like spyware and digital forensics. But here's the thing, that whole persona, it's getting hit with a massive wave of criticism from a lot of experts in the field. Some are even calling his work, and this is a direct quote, calculated disinformation and even pseudoscience. Wow. So you've got this huge gap between the image he projects and how he's seen by his peers. You hear that kind of criticism right off the bat, and you gotta ask the obvious question. So who is the real Jonathan Scott? To figure that out, we really have to look at both sides of the coin. The image that he's so carefully built, and the expert counter-narrative that seems to challenge him at every single turn. So first up, let's talk about that public persona. You know, the compelling image he wants the world to see. This is really the foundation of his influence, and it's built on a few really key claims. A huge pillar of this expert image is his academic background. He says he's a PhD student in computer science at North Central University. You know, that right there lends this air of serious academic authority to everything he does. And then, bam, this is the big one. This is the claim that really put him on the map for a lot of people. His ranking as the #1 U.S. security researcher on the HackerOne platform back in Q3 of 2021. I mean, that is a huge claim. It just screams elite technical skill. Okay, so that's the story he's selling. But now, we gotta flip the script. Because for every single pillar of that public persona, there's a really strong, detailed counter-narrative from the expert community. And yeah, this is where the picture starts to get really murky. So let's go back to that PhD claim. While Scott is proud of his connection to North Central University, his critics are quick to point out that it's an online-only program that apparently starts every Monday, which, makes you question the rigor. But even more seriously, there are allegations floating around that he was actually let go because of code of conduct violations. And what about that shiny #1 ranking on HackerOne? Well, a lot of experts have a specific name for how they think he got it. And believe me, it is not a compliment. They call it reputation hacking. It's basically a way to game the system, not prove you're the best. So what the heck is reputation hacking? Well, think of it like this. Instead of finding one really critical high-quality bug, you just flood the system with hundreds of tiny, low-severity reports, a lot of times just using automated tools. It's all about quantity over quality just to climb that leaderboard. And the real pros in the bug bounty world? Yeah, they do not respect that approach. But just when you think you've got this guy figured out, there's a twist. It would be easy if it was all smoke and mirrors, but it's not. The guy actually has some legit, verifiable technical contributions to his name, and that just adds a whole other layer to this story. For example, he was given a CVE, which is basically an official public credit for finding a security flaw for a medium-severity issue in LG phones. And get this, Apple, yes, that Apple, publicly thanked him for helping with the security issue. So getting a shout-out from Apple is not nothing. There's definitely some real technical skill there, which honestly just makes the whole controversy even more fascinating. So you have this really weird mix, right? Some real skill and some really questionable claims. And all of that leads us right to the main event, the biggest flashpoint of his career, his work around the infamous Pegasus spyware. Okay, so here's the setup. In one corner, you've got the heavyweights, globally respected groups like Citizen Lab and Amnesty International. They publish these groundbreaking reports on Pegasus using hardcore forensic data. And then, in the other corner, you have Jonathan Scott, who comes out and makes this incredibly bold claim that their entire method is flawed and their evidence just can't be trusted. So how did the rest of the cybersecurity world react to his attempt to debunk all this research? Well, they didn't buy it, not even a little. The consensus was pretty brutal. His work on Pegasus is widely seen by experts as a straight-up disinformation campaign. And these critiques weren't just vague, like, we disagree. No, the experts picked his work apart piece by piece. They pointed to personal attacks, his use of what they called technobabble, stuff that sounds super complex but is actually meaningless, and just severe logical mistakes. His main experiment was even called out for being circular reasoning. It was kind of like planting your own wallet in a room and then taking credit for finding it. So what we're seeing here, at least according to his critics, isn't just a bunch of random controversies. They see a pattern, an underlying strategy, and one analyst even gave it a name: the tourist pseudo-hacker pattern. So what does that even mean? Well, picture someone who jumps from being an expert in cybersecurity one day to digital forensics the next, to investigative journalism, all without having a really deep expertise in any one of them. They build their credibility not on solid proof, but on this tangled web of cross-references that's almost impossible for an outsider to verify. And here's how they say this credibility loop works. It's a pretty clever four-step playbook. First, you get a little nod from a big name, like that thank you from Apple. Second, you take that approval and use it to look good in a different community. Third, you jump into a really high-profile, controversial field like spyware. And finally, and this is the key, you claim you have special access to secret reports or data that nobody else can check, which makes you look like an authority. Okay, so I know this might all sound like a bunch of online drama, but who cares, right? Well, this is where it gets really serious. This whole pattern, this persona, it doesn't just stay on the internet. It has had a very real, very tangible impact in the offline world. First off, get this. Who was publicly praising Scott's work that tried to debunk the Pegasus research? A sales executive from NSO Group. Yeah, the very same company that makes the Pegasus spyware. So the guy trying to discredit the research is getting a virtual high five from the company that sells the spyware. That raises a few eyebrows, to say the least. But it gets even crazier than that. This is probably the most startling part. Remember how we said his work was widely discredited by the expert community? Well, that didn't stop his claims from ending up in the halls of power. They were actually cited in a Polish Senate committee hearing that was investigating the use of Pegasus in Poland. When you lay it all out on a timeline like this, you can really see the snowball effect. It's a clear progression, right? In 2021, he gains an online reputation. In 2022, he pivots to this huge controversy. He gets praise from an industry player. And then, bam, by 2023, that same work is influencing a real-world government proceeding. It just shows how fast this stuff can build momentum and have an impact. And really, that's what this whole story boils down to. It leaves us with a really tough question, doesn't it? In the world we live in now, when our current information landscape, what happens when just being notorious, being loud and controversial, becomes more powerful than peer-reviewed, verifiable truth? Where does that leave the fight for integrity and research? It's a huge deal, and definitely something to think about.